Major Reisman, you are ordered by Allied command to select 12 general prisoners, convicted by courts-martial and sentenced to be executed or serve lengthy prison terms for murder, rape, robbery, and other crimes of violence. And you will deliver them secretly behind enemy lines in France to undertake a mission of sabotage that could change the course of the war. The 12 men will be known as the Dirty Dozen.
Lee Marvin as Major John Reisman.
There's a little of Major Reisman in every man, says Marvin. Tough and unyielding, yet compassionate. I think it's the best role I've ever been asked to play.
You've all volunteered for a mission which gives you just 3 ways to go. Either you can foul up in training and be shipped back here for immediate execution of sentence, or you can foul up in combat, in which case I will personally blow your brains out, or you can do as you're told, in which case you might just get by.
Now you hold it right there. This war was not started for your private gratification, and you can be damn sure that this army isn't being run for your personal convenience either.
Ernest Borgnine as General Warden.
I'm tired of seeing generals portrayed as desk-bound pen pushers, says Borgnine. So I've played Warden as a rough professional soldier.
Robert Ryan as Colonel Everett Dasher Breed.
There were officers like Breed, says Ryan, who could never suffer the rules broken or even bend a little.
Major Reisman's compliments, sir. You prefer to be captured or destroyed?
Jimmy Brown as Napoleon Jefferson.
Jefferson is any man fighting for recognition against the odds, says Brown. I think I understand him pretty well.
The hell is this?
John Cassavetes as Victor Franco.
Says Cassavetes. Franco is a petty hoodlum forced to heroism by circumstances beyond his control.
We go on that mission, we all get killed. That's what they want. That's what they want.
Trini Lopez as Jimenez.
He's crawling with hate.
Charles Bronson as Vladislaw.
The last guy in the world you'd expect to be a hero.
Telly Savalas as Archer Maggot.
Maggot is a maniac, says Savalas. His religious fanaticism can never be moderated or quelled. It is a constant danger.
Clint Walker as Samson Posey.
An Indian with war paint smeared on his soul.
Push it!
Train them. Excite them. Arm them.
And turn them loose on the Nazi High Command.
Would you like to know the last time you were on?
Oh my gosh. Probably when Lee Marvin Point Blank came out. That
Well,
was
it's
quite a while
definitely
ago.
when that was. Yes, but I looked it up, and oh, come on, hold on, scintillating conversation here. Hold on, it was I already kind of know it. Hold on, I can spell your name. Search. Yeah. Episode number 312 in September 9th. So almost 2015, almost 8 years to the day.
Wow. That's incredible. That's when the paperback came out. The hardcover came out in 2013.
No.
Oh, hello. Oh, cool. You got the advanced reading copy. That's right.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't
Very,
have the
very
first
cool.
I don't have the first edition autographed I do have an autographed copy. Somebody,
Oh, yes.
somebody did sign my copy.
Somebody. Ah,
Looks
nice
like
guy.
How are you?
I am very well, sir. By the way, before the start, I'm sorry for the screw up.
That's okay.
With technology.
Figured it out.
But
And it seems like you have a very sturdy connection, so we're in good shape.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Before we started this, I watched your interview with John Leguizamo because I'm a fan. I think he's terrific, extremely versatile, and I enjoyed it. He's a fascinating man.
Yes, and he was actually on twice.
Ah.
And you might have seen a slightly edited version. I should put on the full one because what I was trying to do is use the full one for Patreon. You know, those are the subscribers, the paid subscribers, right. But that I have to like start that whole effort over because I'm really it's just a major time consuming type of thing when you want to monetize, something like this. Anything. Yeah, it's true.
And by the way, I have to tell you, it was driving me crazy watching you two. The name of the movie, neither one of you could remember the name of, was Midnight Express with Brad Davis.
Brad Davis.
Yes. You were right. It was a Brad, but it wasn't Pitt, and it wasn't Bradley Cooper.
It's not a Brad Pitt.
And it was Brad Davis. Great movie, by the way.
Dark.
Yes.
Yeah, it was true. Well, we had the same references because he grew up, just a couple of neighborhoods away from me, and we were essentially the same age. So I was very cool. And then the funny thing is, within a few weeks of that, I'm walking in Kingston, New York, which is in the Hudson Valley. I know you're in Southern California.
Yeah, but I've been there many times.
I'm walking through the farmer's market, and I see him with some woman. So I stopped him, and I said, "Listen, I don't normally like to interrupt, people when they're not in a work environment. When they're not." It's not the environment normally where somebody is, where I feel like at liberty to do that. Like if somebody's having a meal, I'm not going to go up and interrupt them, but I said, listen, it's just because you've done the podcast now twice. And he was so sweet and very kind and I said, do you mind, can we do a photo? And he was very accommodating and very generous. Yeah. So speaks well of somebody like, you don't have to be.
Right.
But I also made a point of engaging his friend or partner, whoever she was, I'm not sure, because it's another mistake if you are going to interrupt somebody, on their own time, and then you ignore the people they're with. It's or the person it's rude,
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Anyway, that's this story. So, Killin Generals, Dwayne Epstein, the making of the Dirty Dozen, the most iconic World War II movie of all time. I guess, if you read the title, first of all, you got it. You got most of it right there.
Right. Well, the subtitle was not my idea. That was the publisher. I came up with Killin Generals.
That's a good title.
Yeah.
Good title.
Because it's what the movie's about. And it's paraphrasing the last line in the film. And for those who haven't seen it, I'm not going to repeat it. Spoiler alert.
I think there's no spoiler alerts when it's over. What year? 60? What year did it come out?
67.
Thank you.
Yep.
So it is going on 55, 56 years. Yep. And still one of the most popular films ever made.
That's right.
Everybody knows The Dirty Dozen. But I didn't know, and we can get to it later, but I didn't know its legacy of all the different sequels. And I guess I kind of remembered it, but then and a series and all these other inspirations that you also go on about in its legacy, because, that's further proof. Awards, etc. are one thing, box office is another. And then you have all that, and it really shows how
it kind of created a sort of cottage industry, like some films do. Like a friend of mine just recently published a book about The Exorcist, a 50-year legacy of fear. And that's got, I don't know how many sequels. And there's another one coming out soon.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And we just lost that director.
Oh, the original director, yeah, Billy Friedkin, super nice guy. I had lunch with him once. Great guy. A
Yeah,
genuine lover of movies, which you can't always
totally.
say that about a lot of directors, but he did.
Yeah, he did the show very early on actually, and I got to also meet him.
Oh, very
Uh,
cool.
but I didn't have lunch with him. But he's again also one of the great spontaneous live speakers I've ever encountered.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It was actually by chance I had lunch with him. We were both his autobiography had just come out, and they were doing the West Hollywood Book
Yeah,
Fair, and I was doing that too. And we just happened to be on the craft service table together, and then we sat together and talked about movies. It was
that's
wonderful.
fantastic. Yeah,
And
that was a
and
great
he,
book.
yeah, well, oh, I loved it. I loved it. And also there was Sally Kellerman because her book had just come out, and so my girlfriend decided to take a picture of us together. And William Friedkin was telling us where to stand, and he goes, "I'm sorry, I'm butting in." And I said, "Are you kidding? Missing the chance to tell people I was directed by the great William Friedkin?
Right, exactly.
Tell me whatever you want, man. That's fine
Tell
by
me where to
me."
stand, man. Tell me.
Yeah, you bet.
That's great. Yeah. Well, of course, he also had a reputation back when he was a young guy of being quite the maverick and quite
You could say
the loose
punk,
cannon. I mean,
right?
as far as like being a director, he really, people put a lot of people's life,
Yeah.
well being at risk. I mean, I don't want to say their lives, but
No, yeah, he said the same thing in his autobiography that
right.
when he was
That's
young,
true.
he made a lot of stupid mistakes that he would never make now, just because he said it was all based on ego, his own ego. And but that's okay because luckily, and it is pure luck, nobody got hurt doing
Right.
what he did.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, very much so. You can't say the same for the likes of John Landis or even maybe oh gosh, so many other filmmakers who got their well, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, who did the wrong thing, made the wrong choice.
Alec Baldwin. Who are you going to say?
Right. Well, no. Well, it wasn't who I was going to say. It was how I was going to say it.
Okay.
And so, if you want, you could edit this out. Not the first guy to ever get a dick stuck
No.
in the door.
Well, we're not. Look, they're accidents. I mean,
Right.
they need to be figured out. There needs to be investigations, and people, if they're liable or if they're responsible, they need to take responsibility.
And held accountable. Yeah.
It did actually. I was also reading not long ago, Land that really put the kibosh on Landis and Spielberg's relationship, their friendship. It ended it.
I'm not surprised.
Spielberg really took and he really stepped away. I mean, you don't want any of it be tainted by what that happened on that
Right.
picture, but he was the producer.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
yeah, we're going off on tangents. See, when you get to
it's fun to go on tangents with Dwayne Epstein. Does he have this is the stuff you love, right?
Absolutely, it is. But like I was going to say, when you get two movie buffs like us together, the sky's the limit.
But that's what I want to do. That's my favorite, really the best thing. Look, I'm happy to plug your book. It's called Killin Generals. It's not out in paperback, but
no,
people should buy it in the original hardcover. And where do you recommend people purchase it, by the way?
Yeah, there's my copy.
Where do you want?
cover.
I should get a hard copy too, except my girlfriend's going to get very upset if I bring just two same books into the house.
I would suggest Amazon.
Yeah, okay, but write a review.
To write a review, and also it's sold at a discount, and there's a part of Amazon that allows me to keep track of sales.
Right.
As the author, I can't do that often enough in other ways, such as my publisher only lets me know like once a year. So to keep an ongoing track, Amazon's the best.
Okay. Wanted to get that bit of business out of the way also. Good. Relatively early on.
Thank you.
What, as somebody now, how many books does this make?
Well, books in which they're out there for people to read and buy.
No, just...
Well, in total, I've done about a dozen. But
Okay, that's
there
fine.
were-
That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking how many. I mean, people can find what books are currently in print. That's fine. But what I was going to say is I'd like to know firsthand, like taking this movie, for instance, The Dirty Dozen, as an example. Somebody like yourself, who obviously is a lot before they even get started on the book about this particular movie, but I'm kind of curious to know what what may be something that you didn't know, or you've discovered, or somehow something has changed in your perception of the movie. I'd be really curious about that.
a whole lot.
That's a good answer.
One of the ways I like to explain it is that, well, first of all, it's always been a favorite movie of mine, and I've known a lot of things about it that I discovered were completely untrue. And that's how I like to phrase this, is that there are many urban legends about the film. Number one, it's an urban legend, not true, that it's based on fact. It's not. Absolutely not. It was purely a work of fiction by the author, Nick Nathanson. He wrote the novel. There's an ongoing rumor that's been going on, mostly through social media, that Lee Marvin hated the movie, the star of the film, that he thought it was ridiculous and it was just popcorn fluff. The truth is, he didn't necessarily like the premise, but he loved the film, and he loved the point the film was making, and he loved working with Robert Aldrich. He worked with him 3 times. So
Robert Aldrich, we should talk about it at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. He's a criminally underrated director, as far as I'm concerned. There are several historically, and he's one of them. Sam Fuller, Don Siegel,
Yes.
maybe known amongst some film fans, but not to the general public, like Frank Capra or Steven Spielberg. Anyway, also too, another rumor was that the studio bosses told Robert Aldrich to change the end of the film, and if he did, he would get an Oscar nomination. That's not true, and it's been going around for a long time. I found out it wasn't true from The Perfect Source, which is Ken Hyman, the producer of the movie. He's still alive. He's in his 90s,
Wow.
sharp as a tack, lives in England, and was a wonderful interview. Matter of fact, when it wasn't easy finding him, it took me forever. And as I like to say to people, how come there are no famous Jewish detectives? I was able to find him, but nobody else could. Anyway, when I finally was able to get him, and I got him on the phone, and I said, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Hyman." And he said, "Please call me Ken." And I said, "Okay, I'll try, Mr. Hyman." And he said, "Call me Mr. Hyman one more time, and I'm hanging up this phone." And I was like, "This guy's a straight shooter. I like that." Yeah. And he was. Oh, he was. When I asked him about The Dirty Dozen, needing to have been changed in order to get a possible Oscar nomination, he goes, "I've been hearing that for years, and that's just bullshit. That's not true. Nobody ever said that to Bob," meaning Aldrich. And Aldrich himself once said, and I love this, he once said, because he knows how the Academy, at least in those days, loved biblical films for nominations. And he once said, "I wouldn't get an Oscar nomination if I directed a biblical movie." The fact of the matter is he did. It was Sodom and Gomorrah. So he just may have chosen the wrong biblical subject, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah. Did you how many those examples you just gave of things that you kind of settled some myths about the film? Right. So were those things you discovered, or just that you were able to confirm? Like, did
more confirm? I never knew specifically one way or the other about several of the things I just mentioned, but I had a sense of it, because it just seemed ridiculous to me that the U.S. Army or any part of the U.S. government would recruit hardened murderous criminals for a mission. It's just, right. It doesn't make any sense. They wouldn't do that. And matter of fact, they didn't. One of the things I discovered, and I use it in the introduction, was this quote from Dale Dye. You know who he is?
I don't think so.
Okay. He is he was a captain in the United States Army, major or captain in the U.S. Army during Vietnam. And once he retired, he became an advisor on military films. And he knows his stuff. And one of the things, and on the DVD of The Dirty Dozen, he said that no U.S. Army or no U.S. officer or office would ever condone such an idea. And he said, but there were other armies that did. And he used the example of the Nazis that did that. And on my own, I discovered, and it's interesting too, because this is in the news like now, that guy in Russia who ran that organization called, or the company called Wagner, the mercenaries, his name is Prigozhin, and Putin
the one that was just taken out.
That's right. That's right. And that guy, he did the exact same thing. NBC News got an exclusive report of him going to Russian prisons and inviting them to fight prisoners, convicted murderers, hardened criminals, doing 10 to 20 years. So they would possibly get amnesty if they fought in the war in the Ukraine. And they did. Those mercenaries, they're hardened criminals.
Because I would have thought, possibly and I mean this seriously, is that in Russian prisons there might be innocent people.
There may be, but the reason why he went to these particular prisons, like this cell block, whatever, was that these guys were exactly, they were the real deal. And some of the things he said to them to recruit them were amazing. I put them in the book, saying things like, "We don't encourage you to have sex with male, female, flora, or fauna, but we can't watch you every moment of every day, and just use your best judgment." And flora and fauna? What the hell? Bizarre.
Yeah. Well, that ended well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it ended well for Putin.
Speaking of war, and Lee Marvin, as I know from reading a book about him some years ago, 8 years ago, in fact, almost to the day. I read this biography. There it is. That was a good one. That was another good one.
Thank
you.
And
he had PTSD, did he not?
Yes, he did. And the way I wrote about it in the book, when the book was published, I hadn't had it confirmed to me that he did. With me, it was simply, and I used to say this when I was doing other promotion for it, it was simply a very good guess on my part, because I'm not a clinician. I'm not any form of medical professional, but the stories people would tell me about him, his friends, his family, his coworkers, I would say, I used to tell people that if there were 10 symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, Lee had 8. Well, it turns out after the book came out, I talked to a friend of his, a gentleman named Ralph O'Hara, very good friend of his, who told me, yes, he had PTSD. He confirmed it. And more importantly, he knew it.
Oh, but he didn't know. Did he know that? Was it like a diagnosis? Did he actually know what that was before?
Well, it worked like this. He had a friend, a doctor who specialized in it. He was, in fact, he worked with him on a TV show in the early 60s called People Need People. Because this gentleman, his name was Dr. Harry Wilner, he created the idea of using group therapy to help returning soldiers with PTSD. And in any event, they were friends from then on. And at one point, Harry Wilner asked Lee to watch some video of soldiers being interviewed from Vietnam who have PTSD and pick out the ones he liked the best to use in a documentary. Well, as Lee, this is from Ralph O'Hara, who was there. Ralph said Lee was watching it, and as he was watching it, Lee went, "Oh my God, that's me. Everything they're talking about, I've gone through myself. I know what they've been through, and I know what's going on." So that was proof right there. Ralph O'Hara witnessed him knowing it. Now, keep in mind too, this was much later in life. This was like 2 or 3 years before he died. So he went most of his life not knowing.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Yes. He did, because of his alcoholism, which is also, by the way,
of course,
from PTSD. Because of his, exactly. But because of the alcoholism, he did attempt many times to quit. He went through the rigors of AA. He went to he saw a psychiatrist at his wife's insistence. He did several things, mostly cold turkey, and it never worked. Even up until the day he died, he kept drinking. So
another interesting sort of sidebar to that, making the film for Lee Marvin's his personal life anyway, was that he had started probably before he started the production of, I'm guessing, he met Michelle Triola.
Oh yeah,
right.
He met her when he was making Ship of Fools. She was an extra in the movie.
Okay. Those
which was,
extras.
yeah,
And he's
that-
married.
I'm sorry.
He was married.
Yes, he was.
That marriage was ending regardless.
Yeah, they were separated. He and his first wife Betty,
Okay.
whom I interviewed and got to know very well. She was a very sweet lady.
Yeah.
And he was living in his trailer on the studio lot when he met Michelle Triola.
Later, that became a very famous case.
Yes, it did. Palamone,
Right.
Marvin versus Marvin. And what's interesting is that even when he was making the Dirty Dozen, he made the rather, I don't know, stupid mistake, whatever, of inviting both Michelle Triola and Betty Marvin to England at the same time, which was,
and somehow they did not run into each other. Correct?
No, yeah, mainly because of a friend of Lee's named Bob Phillips. He took care of everything. He was his beard.
Well, it's good to have Bob Phillips in your life. It just sounded like his ex-wife was a real class act. It does sound that way because she seemed to handle the whole thing. Maybe she realized, it's it's not necessarily optimal to be in a relationship with Lee Marvin. He's kind of just
one of my favorite things she said to him was one day he came. They were in the bedroom sitting, and he just sat down next to her, and he just out of nowhere he said, "Betty, I don't think I want to be married anymore." And Betty looked at him and went, "You could have told me that 4 children ago."
Yeah. Wow.
She was a classy broad. She really was. I don't use that term loosely, broad.
No. Yeah. No, I know that. I know you're using it very specifically. Yeah. Palimony was this was he had to pay her and they weren't married. That's what palimony is, right? Because it's not it was a rare case.
Her lawyer was Marvin Mitchelson, and he's the one who
right, the guy with the fringe who would wear the fringe cowboy jackets and all.
Yeah, he called it alimony for a pal.
Right.
So it's palimony. Isn't that cute?
Yeah. So I was remembering it as something else, but I'm realizing that palimony makes sense because it's as though they had a what do you call it? It's not obviously a legal marriage, but it was recognized as something closely adjacent to that.
Yeah, it was precedent setting, and it changed family law in the state of California. But the one thing most people don't remember, and I've had arguments with people about this, and I've shook papers at them, legal papers telling them that Lee Marvin won that case. Everybody thinks he didn't. He won it. Now, what happened was the trial judge said, you don't have to give her, she was suing him for $6 million, okay? She didn't get $6 million. The judge said, give her $104,000 to rehabilitate herself and get training for a job. He was like, fine. But then his lawyer, after that, said, you want to go for the appeal? Maybe get the money before you send it out. And Lee went, you know what? I'm sick of this. I'm tired of this whole circus. I don't want to have anything to do with her or Marvin Mitchelson. Forget it. Then his lawyer said, didn't you hate the way Mitchelson treated you in the courtroom? And that's when Marvin went, okay, go for the appeal. And they did. They got the money back. Okay. And the day the appeal was announced, Michelle Triola was arrested in a Beverly Hills boutique for stealing underwear.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that story.
Yeah. You just can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
You could try, but it's not going to be as good as the real thing.
Which could be applied, of course, to the Dirty Dozen as
bingo. Absolutely right.
So let's start.
Nice segue.
Going back into the main story here. And we're talking to Dwayne Epstein, the author of multiple books on Hollywood films, but this one, the Dirty Killin Generals, and now available at Amazon or where books are sold.
Yeah, Barnes and Noble. Yeah,
Barnes and Noble, where books are sold. So one of of course, so many amazing, like within the first 2 minutes of the film, after the snapping of the neck there, at the iconic opening scene, where a soldier, I guess in the brig,
Stockade. The brig is the Navy.
Oh, thank you. That's right. The stockade. He gets. It's a shocking opening scene, by the way.
Yes, it is.
And but within minutes, you're already like introduced to 5 or 6 characters with some of the biggest iconic actors.
That's right. That's right.
Just kind of pretty amazing opening sequences of that movie.
Yeah, that opening, by the way, of him, Major Reisman, Lee Marvin, being made to watch the hanging of Private Gardner, that's right out of the novel. That's how the book starts. But then there are a lot of changes from the novel to the book, which I get into in my book.
Why did that? Maybe you could finish what you were saying, and then I'm also interested in why you did go into such detail about the novel too.
I'm glad you asked that, because I've gotten some criticism for that. And my feeling was, when I went over the novel many times and like with a fine-tooth comb, and I think it was important for readers to know what was in the book as opposed to what's in the movie. And I think it reads better to know what the novel was about and then show what the movie is about. And also, too, there were changes along the way in the movie.
Yeah, but for you personally, you made that choice because of something that you were interested in, not necessarily the reader. I'm just curious to know what for you made you feel like you felt compelled to do that. Criticism aside or not, I just wanted to know why you personally found that to be so interesting. Maybe you love the novel. I don't know.
I liked it a lot. I didn't love it, but I liked it a lot. And I'll tell you something. I had read it a long time ago when I was a teenager. And then when I got the contract for this book, I decided to read the novel again. And I was blown away by how much, number one, I had forgotten, and how very different it was from the movie. And I thought readers should know that. Yes, I did it for my own edification, of course. But more importantly, I thought anybody who was a fan of the movie may or may not have read the novel. And if they did, they may not have remembered it. And I thought they should know what Mick Nathanson had in mind when he wrote the book. And I wanted to bring that out.
Mm-hmm.
And for better or for worse, I think I did. And like I said, there were also things changed in the movie. The script was revised, I'd say, about 4 or 5 times.
Sure.
And I mentioned those changes as well. And there, to me, there were some major differences. One of them being my favorite. One example is that the character Telly Savalas played in the movie, a character named Maggot, the religious redneck bigot. Okay, those were 3 different characters in the book.
Right. Yeah.
3 separate characters, all with background. And what the screenwriters, Lucas Heller and Nunnally Johnson, did was meld them all into one. And I think if you didn't know that was in the novel, you would think that, Telly Savalas played it beautifully, but it would seem amazing. I mean, it seems amazing to me when you read the book that was 3 different people, and it wasn't just one guy in the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
And that's just one example.
Yeah. No, and I think that if you are a particular lover of this film, you're going to enjoy that whole sequence part of your book, which quite a bit. So Telly Savalas, Lee Marvin, we know, Robert Webber,
Mm-hmm.
George Kennedy,
right?
Ernest Borgnine,
Mm-hmm. Charles Bronson, Jim Brown.
Never heard of him. Jim Brown.
Never heard of Bronson? No? You really ought to get out more, Adam.
I know. What's your next biography?
Well, it was going to be Charles Bronson, but
I think I remember that
contract. Yeah, it was going to happen, but that was in 2017, and it's a long, boring story, but it wound up getting canceled. But I'm working on several projects, even as we speak, of which I cannot speak. Because
well, that's
I don't
good.
want to jinx.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I'm not asking. I'm just glad you are.
Me too.
Because I learn a lot. Talk more about also. Just let's go through the rest of the actors, because Walker,
sure.
Clint Walker.
Yeah, I interviewed him. I interviewed him 3 times.
That's amazing. Is he still alive?
Yeah, not anymore. No, he passed away last year.
Oh, last year.
Of 98, I think. Something like that.
Yeah,
he was up there.
And Trini, of course, the great Trini Lopez.
Right. Well, he passed away before I started the project. Well, Clint Walker did too, but I had him in my archives, kind of. And there were a couple of other people, but I interviewed Donald Sutherland. I
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah, Ken
And then
Hyman.
John Cassavetes was in it. You couldn't have interviewed him, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm a huge Cassavetes fan as
Me
both
too.
an actor and a director.
Me too.
Husband being my favorite film of his. And as far as acting goes, he was the only one from the cast of The Dirty Dozen to get Oscar nominated, and deservedly. He was terrific in the movie. He really
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. I love him too. Husbands is great. Yeah. I have copies of all these things.
Right
You know,
on.
I watch every couple of years or so,
Mm-hmm.
you got to get through the Cassavetes,
Oeuvre.
binge. Yeah. And just kind of binge,
Right.
Who did I leave out?
Let's
gotta
see.
be
You mentioned Robert Ryan.
Robert Ryan. Of course. He's also right in the opening moments. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned Robert Webber, George Kennedy. Well, I got the poster behind me. Donald Sutherland, yeah, George Kennedy, Clint Walker, Robert Webber, Richard Jekyll.
Oh,
Yeah, Richard Jekyll. Yeah, he was cool.
Yes.
He was very cool.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
So
and also, too, there's a thing that they call the bottom six, of which Donald Sutherland was actually one of them, and he was able to build his part up better as they were filming. One of the most famous scene he had in the movie, where he's making believe he's a general inspecting Robert Ryan's troops, that was supposed to go to Clint Walker, but Clint Walker didn't want to do it, and he had a reason. He said, because my character is Native American, I think it would be frowned upon by other Native Americans. So this was during the rehearsal, and Robert Aldridge looked at the end of the table and said, "Hey, you with the big ears, you do it." And that's what Donald Sutherland told me.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, I've always had rather large ears," and that's how we got the role.
Another great actor, right?
Yep.
And yeah. So the bottom six. This is like about the star power structure, and the casting process, kind of a combination of those two things, and it also set up like a kind of a power,
a pecking order kind of
pecking order, and also just a certain dynamic, I guess, is what I'm saying, on the set too, of course.
Absolutely,
right.
Absolutely. Cassavetes said in an interview that when they were making the movie, by the way, he didn't want to make the movie. He got kind of forced into it because of a lawsuit he was facing. And Ken Hyman said to me that John Cassavetes is a wonderful actor, terrific director, great writer, but he's a great big pain in the ass.
Yeah,
because he had to fight with him to get him to do it, and because he wanted to finish making the movie he had started to make, but he ran out of money on Faces. And the way Hyman talked him into it was by going, "Look, John, make The Dirty Dozen. It's a great part. Take that money, finish your own movie," which is exactly what he did. Now, while they were rehearsing it, anytime Robert Aldridge asked for a suggestion or a change of a line, do this, do that, Cassavetes always shot his hand right up there immediately, going, I'll do it. And he goes, "I know I didn't make a lot of friends in the cast by doing that, but I don't care. I was enjoying the hell out of that. He was having a lot of fun." He wound up having fun, even though he didn't think he would, mainly because he liked Aldridge a lot. He thought Aldridge was a great director, and he got along wonderfully with him.
Why don't you talk about Aldridge?
Sure. This handle has been put on a lot of different directors, but it really fits Aldridge. He was a maverick. He did what he wanted to do, and the studios be damned. And he proved it time and time again. Not all of his films are great. Nobody has that great a batting average, but
certainly not someone as prolific as that.
Right. And I do think his batting average was pretty good for a maverick. Some of the movies he made are some of the most famous ever made, even though people don't even know he made them. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte? Flight of the Phoenix? Emperor of the North, another one with Lee Marvin. He did a film in the 50s, a wonderful indictment of the military system called Attack with Eddie Albert, Jack Palance, Lee Marvin. He had something to say, and he said it. He didn't beat around the bush. He didn't play games. He didn't wink at the camera. The point he wanted to make in a given movie based on the subject matter was very pointed, and it was steely, and it was powerful to watch when he put it in a well-made plot storyline. He was wonderful. And another thing about him that I found fascinating was that he came from wealth, and he came from prominence. His father was he grew up in Rhode Island. His father was a congressman in Rhode Island, and his uncle was Nelson Rockefeller.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And he basically walked away from all that by choice. He was told by his family, "We'll disinherit you if you proceed into the dream you have of being in the film industry." And he said, "I'm fine. You go ahead. You disinherit me." And he went. He got a job in the post office of RKO through an uncle. And from the post office, he worked his way up all
Is
the way
that
to
the mailroom?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the mailroom. Yeah,
Yeah, I figured. Yeah,
I'm
same
sorry.
difference. No, that's
Um,
fine. It's the same idea.
but
A lot of sorting, a lot of
but yeah,
distribution.
exactly.
Yeah,
Hey, Jack Nicholson started that way.
a lot of people did. A lot of
What
people.
he did, that's true. What he did was every chance he got to put to put his foot on another rung on the ladder, moving up, he wound up working with some of the greatest filmmakers of all time: William Wellman, Charlie Chaplin, Jean
Wow.
Renoir, you name it. And he learned a lot from all of them. And he finally got his first break at directing in the early 50s. And then he started working from there. He made the first Western sympathetic to Native Americans called Apache with Burt Lancaster. He was very liberal and proud of it. When he started his own production company, it wasn't called the Aldrich Company. It was called Associates and Aldrich.
That's funny.
Meaning, yeah, the people that worked for him he thought were more important, and he stood by it. He's an interesting man.
And you take another Maverick. It might have been a few years later. Hal Ashby. Hollywood really, he really got
absolutely
fucked over by, the Hollywood industry.
Yeah,
power, whatever.
He started out as an editor for Norman Jewison, and then when he finally went out on his own,
he also produced for Norman Jewison.
Yeah, right. He also directed
The Heat of the Night. He produced, I think, he produced The Heat of the Night.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. He co-produced it. Yeah, but he directed some of my favorite movies of all time: The Last Detail.
Oh yeah.
Harold and Maude.
Harold and Maude. I've heard of that one. The Shampoo. You ever see The Landlord?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think that was his first film, if I'm not mistaken, as a director.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Which was produced by Norman Jewison, I think.
There you go.
I think I may be mistaken, but I'm just saying they really, even he had an incredible run. Even people loved him, and yet, because he was, he threw, he would throw suits off the set or whatever he did, or he would not friendly to the suits. He wasn't good at that. So he was really his career was sabotaged.
To a certain extent, part of it was also based on the fact that he made some pretty bad choices in his career.
Maybe, yeah. But I'm just thinking about Aldrich, and he still, even late in life, right? He had some big hits, didn't he?
Yes, he did, and he made a hell of a comeback with the movie The Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds, which in a way was kind of reminiscent of The Dirty Dozen.
That's true.
Cons against the guards,
right?
And I remember Leonard Maltin said that if ever there was an audience-pleasing movie, I can't think of a better one than The Longest Yard. If you've ever seen that movie in the theater with an audience, they go, and understandably, it's a fun movie.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen that version. I have to admit, it's. I do remember really enjoying it, though. Yeah. So we understand the themes that Aldrich was interested in, and what he found really appealing and compelled to make films about. Yeah.
He was very much anti-establishment. He was very much anti-war, anti-military.
Sure. But it's all in the delivery. It's all in the delivery, and how like that's the thing. It's like, how do you deliver the message? And like you take The Longest Yard, and I guess even to a great degree, The Dirty Dozen, and you make this incredibly entertaining movie with all the very star-studded. And then you put your message in there. Dirty Dozen is, at the end of the day, even though a lot of people had trouble stomaching it, maybe because it was kind of brutal, but at the same time, it was an anti-war movie, and that idea of showing violence, of showing the ugly side of it, the reality of it. Like there are scenes where I know people had trouble with the way they killed Nazis.
Right. Absolutely
right. The audience.
Right. And for that reason, it got mixed reviews, because some people were horrified with the idea of how it was done, as well as the fact that many of them may have been innocent. I personally don't know how innocent a woman who hangs out with Nazis might be, but that's me.
Yeah.
That aside, Aldrich himself had said he was making a point here, and the point was it was symbolic of what we were doing in Vietnam with napalm, and it was also even more symbolic about what the Nazis were doing to Jews in World War II.
Yeah.
And that's the old saying, show don't tell. You couldn't just say that these are bad people, so they have to be killed or they're going to kill us. He had to show it. Now, one of the other things he didn't do, which I'm glad he didn't do, was there were no real Nazi characters in the film, except for one, the woman whom I interviewed, by the way, the one that Telly Savalas kills. Her name is Dora Reiser. I interviewed her, and she, by the way, was a Holocaust survivor, which is an interesting.
It is an interesting turn.
Yes, indeed, and that's what Aldrich's point was, and some critics got it, a lot of critics didn't. So it was kind of the definition of mixed reviews. Like, how dare he show how brutal war is? How dare he show psychopaths, doing what they do to maybe innocent people? Well, that's the point. He was saying war is insane. Here's proof. He's showing it to you. And Lee Marvin said the same thing, especially in terms of those who thought he didn't like the movie. He said in interviews, he would say, let's not kid ourselves. War is a dirty business, okay? Violence is what war is about. And then he goes, don't think there weren't women and children involved with the bombing of Dresden. There were, and we did it, okay? So, I mean, not bad for a guy who didn't like the movie, huh?
And finally, I just want to also touch upon, you mentioned earlier, the screenwriters. The primary screenwriter, the principal screenwriter, is one of the most famous screenwriters in Hollywood.
Nunnally Johnson.
40s.
Yeah, Nunnally Johnson. Yep.
Yeah.
He won the Oscar for a screenplay for Grapes of Wrath.
John Ford.
Yep, and he also directed on occasion as well. He directed, I think it was The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit, which he also wrote. He wasn't the first choice. Ken Hyman talked him into it, and it's interesting because this is my favorite anecdote about the casting of the movie. Before Robert Aldrich was brought in to direct, Ken Hyman was looking for stars early on, and he approached John Wayne to play Rice.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and
the Lee Marvin role.
Right, and when John Wayne read the script, he sent a note back to Ken Hyman that said, I don't know who wrote this piece of crap, but my guess is it's some sandal-wearing, long-haired hippie freak carrying a sign against the war he should be fighting himself.
Hal Ashby.
Yeah, right. except the screenplay was written by a 66-year-old veteran of Hollywood. Shows you how far off base John Wayne was. Now, once he finished the script, Robert Aldrich by that time was already hired. He wasn't crazy about the fact that Ken Hyman had approached John Wayne. In fact, he disliked that idea completely. He was the one who suggested Lee Marvin, who agreed. Now, because this is the way he put it to Ken Hyman. This is a really good script for 1945. This movie's coming out in 67. We need to punch this up a little bit. He said in the 40s, war was cake. Now it's cancer. That's how he put it. Mm-hmm. So he brought in a kind of what he would, I guess, consider a stock writer. He had several people in his crew company he would always work with, and one of them was Lucas Heller. He wrote the screenplay to Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and also Flight of the Phoenix. And he did a lot of revisions on the script. Johnson. Nunnally Johnson hated it.
Oh, he bristled.
Oh, big time. He wanted his name taken off the script. More importantly, he wanted Lucas Heller's name taken off the script, and it went to arbitration.
Yeah, right. It was him or
yeah, and
Johnson, right?
And the WGA decided to give him both screen credit. And then late in life, he was asked if he ever saw The Dirty Dozen, and he said no, and I never will. It's kind of like being an expectant father in the waiting room and not quite sure who the father is.
Yeah.
So
well, it was. When was it? How many times do you feel like you may have seen The Dirty Dozen? Impossible to count.
I don't do that. I mean, I don't watch something and then click it off and go, okay, that makes 137 times.
I know that.
Yeah. But I know some people who do that. I think it's strange, but I just say a lot.
A lot. How recently was the last time, do you think?
It's so funny. I watched it again 2 or 3 times while I was working on the book, and then the book had already come out, and literally last Memorial Day, the beginning of this summer, I watched it again on Turner, and by God, that son of a gun still holds up. There's
Yeah.
so many great scenes. I love it.
Well, I look forward to one thing. I mean, you're not a writer for hire, that's for sure. You write about the films that you love and the actors you love.
Well, if I can get
So-
hired for that reason, that would be terrific.
Of course it would. I'm not in any. Yeah, I'm not dumb, but
Yeah, I know you're not.
no. I mean, I'm just saying. Of course, it'd be nice to get hired to write something. But it helps if you are, a huge fan, and because you're an expert, but you're also a fan, and that's
Right.
a great combination.
You bet. It's funny you would say that because I've done magazine articles and I worked for a newspaper. I also worked for a publishing company in which I wrote some children's novels. But some of my first professional writing was doing young adult biographies for a company, and that was just being, a hired gun. But luckily, I got to pretty much pick and choose the subject matters.
Oh,
So I was able to write about Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi, Will Ferrell. I'm looking at my bookshelf here. Denzel Washington, Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler was my first one, and they gave me a choice of 3 because I've heard people, and this was back in the day, and people asked me, "Why the hell did you write about Adam Sandler?" And I said, "Well, the choices were Adam Sandler, George Bush, or Eminem." So I went with Adam Sandler.
it's going to be fun. I mean, that's the good when you're doing the work,
Yeah.
and
Well, I'll tell you,
when you're doing your homework, it's pretty fun to be watching all those sketches and films.
Right. I'll tell you the truth. I wouldn't have even gone with Adam Sandler if it wasn't for the fact that I had just seen Punch Drunk Love, which is a terrific movie.
Yeah.
And I love that film, and I'm a big Paul Thomas Anderson fan, and I was able to go from there.
I really appreciate it. I want people to go out and get a copy, go see the movie, watch the movie, and which I'm pretty sure is easily available on streaming.
Yes, I think it is. And somebody told me a new streaming service is carrying it as well. But and Turner shows it all the time.
Of course,
fairly often.
Right.
Veterans Day, Memorial Day, that kind of thing.
Right. Which we are talking on. Well, no, we're not. We're talking on Labor Day, but
yeah, right.
Close enough. Labor Day. Read it on Labor Day.
I always like to tell people that if they're, I'm going to watch the movie again and then I'll read your book. I like to tell them, do it the other way around. If you've seen the movie before, read the book first, then watch the movie again, because there are things in the book that you look for when you watch the movie.
That's true.
Wow, I never noticed that. I didn't know they did that. Things like that.
Yeah. That's true. Good. Dwayne, thank you.
Adam, thank you. Always a pleasure.